now. Okay. So today is Sunday, August 9th, 2020. I, Earl Care Brown, am sitting in my home in Spanish Fork, Utah. Gerald Edward Brown, my dad, is sitting in my sister's home in Anaheim, California. So, Dad, we just made a list of some people and choices, decisions that you've made that have influenced you. So, talk to me more about your mom and dad, how they influenced you. I'll have some follow-up questions perhaps as we go along, but just talk to me about your mom and dad, their influence, how they influenced your testimony, whatever comes to mind about your mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, their dedication to the gospel set the pattern for me, and I can't hardly think of anything more influential than their lives and their dedication to the church and to the gospel. Wow, couldn't top that with anything in my life, I don't think. Particularly, I'd have to say, particularly Mom. Dad, because of his responsibilities with United Airlines and with the presiding bishopric and whatnot, wasn't around as nearly as much as, of course, Mom. Mom kept the home fires burning while Dad was traveling around the world and doing his thing with the company and with the church. So I'm not sure how to state it other than the fact that all my standards and all my what word am I looking for?
Your values.
Yeah, there you go. All my values were based on my parents. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. What were some of those values, you think? What values did they teach you? Whether, explicit teaching, like let's sit down and do a family meeting on this value, or just, I assume, more kind of naturalistic teaching of values.
Yeah, just general. I mean, it was obvious that the church and the gospel was paramount in their lives, and therefore it became automatically paramount in my life. And so they were an example. They were an example that everything I hope that I am exuding now would be from them.
What are some of the good characteristics that you saw in your parents? I mean, you mentioned the gospel and faithfulness and whatnot, but
naturally, since Dad became bishop and later in the stake presidency, it was obvious that his duties were really important, and he fulfilled them faithfully. He did that with everything he did. I mean, from his childhood in Carson, Alberta, Canada, to his death date, where all of his duties and whatnot were taken care of, and he was a remarkable kind of person. And Mom too. I mean, Mom probably even more so than Dad. Mom was around all the time, and Dad was really, how can I say it? Ultra busy. Okay, ultra busy, and therefore, unfortunately, we didn't have much contact with Dad, nearly as much as, of course, with Mom. But since that's so many decades ago, it's hard for me to verbalize those feelings about Mom and Dad. Anyway.
Yeah, so you saw that they're both faithful members of the church, faithful workers in the work, the work of the church. And, Dad, I should point out now that I feel that you and Mom have that same influence on me. I saw very faithful workers in the church, faithful with your callings, faithful with...
I hope that we pass some of those things down to you kids. And looking at my children and my children-in-law and whatnot. Wow. I'm just totally satisfied and impressed and joyful that the direction that all of my children and grandchildren have gone in life. I mean, it's just totally incredible what has happened. It's just almost like a fairy tale story to me as I think of some of the other people that were, some of the other kids that were in our ward and that were influencing you guys and there's hardly any that have the track record, I guess if you say it. Hardly any that have the track record that you kids have.
Thanks, Dad. I very much appreciate your example and Mom's example of faithfulness to the church, faithfulness to your beliefs and your faith. But let's go back, Dad, to your parents. I don't want to introduce a negative idea if it's not there. So, but I'm wondering if you ever felt like, I'm not sure if resentment's the right word, but I'll use resentment here. If you ever felt resentment that your dad was so busy with his work with United Airlines and his work in the church as stake president in Denver, right? He was stake president for some amount of time in Denver, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel resentment or any type of like negative, like, why is my dad home more, type of feeling?
Well, at the time, and even now as I reflect back on it, I don't recall any negative reaction to their lives, and especially to Dad's life being gone all the time. Dad was doing what he was expected to do in United Airlines and the presiding bishopric and whatnot. So I don't remember negativity in my relationship or my feelings towards Dad. I frankly don't remember. It's only years afterwards, and I look back on it, and I see and feel that in those days, actually, here's the bottom line. As I recall, rightly or wrongly, the church did not. Now I'm trying to blame. I don't mean to be blame on the church. The church did not, as they're currently doing, recognize the critical nature of parents and what they were doing with their families. I don't remember those teachings. I don't remember any direction or stress in our curriculum way back then. Vastly different, actually, vastly different than what it eventually turned to be. You know, I've been very happy that the church leaders, the prophets and others have recognized the need to have a balance between church, gospel duties and whatnot, and family duties. And so the change in the church's almost teachings, I guess, has been a big factor. And I've just been so happy that there has been some emphasis put on family, on family duties and whatnot. I wish, to be honest with you, sometimes there were a little bit more, because I can think of well, I can't judge all the people that had jurisdiction in the church and their awards and stake, but I feel, rightly or wrongly, the market change occurred sometime along the line that even now, as I read the Ensign and other church publications, that there's important direction and emphasis given more to the family than there was previously. Anyway, that's maybe a side issue, Earl.
Yeah, let's get back to your parents. Anything more about your parents? What can you tell me more about your parents?
Oh, My memory, frankly, is too foggy to give any input in that respect about my parents and what they were doing and what they did.
You remember their relationship? Can you talk to us? I mean, I'm doing this so that your descendants and anyone else, I guess, get to know you and your upbringing, what caused you to be the person you are. Can you tell us, I'll say us, but whatever, me, about their relationship? Do you remember their kind of relationship, or they
With each other or with me?
either, I guess, with each other? I was thinking first, maybe with you directly later.
Uh, well, in terms of their relationship with me, I couldn't ask for more conscientious parents and loving kind of parents. I did. I remember feeling. I think I remember feeling bad that Dad had not shown more consideration and overt love for Mom. Dad was very, very busy. I mean, in those days, I don't remember hardly tiddly squat being said about balance between duties in the church and the family. So I didn't see a real binding relationship between Mom and Dad until much later in life. Towards the end of life, wow, Dad became very, what's a good adjective or verb?
Solicitous.
Solicitous, that's the word.
Yeah, can you talk to me about that, Dad? When your mom became ill, and you know the illness that eventually took her life, can you tell me about how your dad, reacted, or what did he do?
Well, he was very, very solicitous of her condition and our needs at that time. Yeah, he was. I couldn't ask for a better reaction from him, but you know, and this is probably not very good, but I often wondered if President Drury, the stake president that Dad worked under, ever voiced or showed concern about Dad's need to be with Mom, especially as she's coming down with cancer and eventually perishing. I can't help but wonder if President Drury or anybody else emphasized to Dad the need to be at home, to be with Mom as she was going through her demise because of her health problems.
That was President Drury a stake president in Denver or Salt Lake?
Denver. Yeah. My experience with the church was really Denver. I don't remember anything about my experience because we were too young when we moved from Denver to eastward, you know, Chicago and Washington and everything. I was a little snotty-nosed kid. So I don't remember anything.
Well, that's why the reason I ask is because your mom died 28 years after they left Denver to go to Salt Lake, because your dad was called as into the presiding bishopric as a counselor, I believe.
Yeah.
So she died in 1989.
Yeah.
So President Drury wasn't in the picture anymore during that time, right? When she was getting sick and died.
I can't give you the chronology of it. I don't remember the chronology of it at all. All I remember is President Drury was Dad's boss and the stake president. So I can't give you any dates or chronology at all.
So just to make it clear, though, your dad served as a counselor to President Drury in the stake presidency in Denver?
Yes.
Okay.
True.
So can you tell something more about, do you remember, I mean, you were living in California, obviously, with your family, when your mom got sick and died, but do you know what your dad did to help her at that time? Or take care of her?
What he did to help her?
What I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to figure out the relationship. What was your parents' relationship? And when your mom got sick and died, I'm curious to know if you know what your dad.
Well, once again, the solicitous is is the word that comes to my mind. I mean, but then again, we're talking almost 50 years ago. So to paint you a very accurate, vivid picture of what was happening between the two of them, it'd be very difficult. I don't remember. I frankly don't remember. I wish I did. I wish I could give you an outline of how Dad demonstrated his love for Mom and his care for her until she passed away. I know that their relationship improved 100%, 100% as she was battling with cancer and stuff. I saw Dad very solicitous of her well-being.
Dad, I bet you learned that from your dad, because when my mom, Janice,
Yes,
Bradford Brown, came down with cancer, and you were highly solicitous of her. I mean, you were just a hard worker. You again went into hard work mode to try and help Mom, and I think, I bet you, follow the example you saw your dad.
that probably had an influence on me. I suspect. I would guess that was true. I know. Wow, those years of Mom, because Mom was what, 6 years during her demise. Isn't that right? About 6 years.
Yeah, Mom. Yeah, she was diagnosed in, I think, late '99 and died in March of '06.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that was one period in my life. I felt that I was doing fairly much of what I should be doing as a as a husband and father. But
Yeah.
that was quite a traumatic experience. And
Yeah.
her death was, of course, a traumatic experience, but a positive one. I'll never forget her taking her last breaths, and those of us that were there, which included Christine and Glenn, unfortunately had gone home for the night. We didn't know that Mom would be passing away that very night, so he had gone home. And trying to think who besides, Mike might have been there, but we were all so overjoyed that she was released. That's probably a common feeling of people that are going through something so horrible as cancer.
Yeah, Dad. Hey, do you mind? I don't know if we've ever recorded you talking about those last moments. Can you mind if I read you a bit of Chris's journal that she sent out to?
No, I like it. Go ahead.
I think her siblings.
I would like that.
And I want to I'd like to record you talking about those last few moments. But anyway, she sent probably 7 pages of journal entry, or 5 pages of journal entry. And I'm trying to find, okay, so trying to find a good point to stop here. This is pretty hard for me to read that. I'll probably start crying.
It's hard for you to read because of your emotions, or
yeah. Okay. I start crying every time I talk about Mom, especially her death. But anyway, right here, the nurse listened to her noises through the phone. Okay, so let me just back up a bit here. I began to get somewhat impatient because,
you're quoting Mom.
I'm quoting Chris's journal.
Oh, you're quoting Chris. Okay.
Yeah. A couple of times throughout the night, Dad came in and said to Mom in a loving, I can't read this, Mom. Dad, I can't get. Anyway, I can't get through any of this, Dad. I'm crying right now. During one of her more lucid moments, she whispered that she hadn't had enough to eat. This was a common concern of hers throughout her last several months. So she moved her hands as if she were eating something. My heart sank. She also began picking at herself as if she were picking lint off of her. I learned later that this is a common sign of the end being near. She also would wave her hands and arms in front of her as if she were trying to touch someone in front of her. She talked, or rather whispered, constantly. Seeing her in these incoherent moments where she was hallucinating nonstop was very difficult. Her gibberish talking seemed to get louder and louder. She was obviously getting very agitated. Dad had mentioned that she had hallucinated that night, all night the previous night. When he said all night, I guess he really meant all night because it was nonstop for several hours. A couple of times throughout the night, Dad came in and said to Mom in a loving, reprimanding voice something like, "Sweetheart, it's time to go to sleep." At one point, Dad and I fanned Mom and put a washcloth with cold water on her head and arms because she was burning up. She was dripping in sweat. Her body was so incredibly hot. That should have been indication enough that her body was in distress and that she was in pain, but I still wasn't sure what was going on at that point. I began to get somewhat impatient because I was so extremely exhausted. I kept thinking, "Please, Mom, be quiet," and wished that she would go back on how she was earlier that afternoon. I also kept thinking that I didn't know how long I could stand seeing my mother in this state. I set aside a silent prayer, asking Heavenly Father to please take her.
Wow. I'd forgotten that.
The noises that she was making got louder and louder. The noises didn't sound like Mom. It was almost non-human-like. It was like an involuntary noise that her body was making, and not my mom. I wondered if she was in pain. I couldn't tell. It wasn't really moaning, so I thought, but it did sound like with every exhale that something was wrong. She was very agitated. So Dad and I called the hospice nurse. The nurse listened to her noises through the phone and said that soon before death, people make a noise when they exhale because the body is having to force air out or something like that. She said that based on what she heard, it would likely be within 2 hours. Little did we know that she was almost right on. The nurse that came seemed very young but experienced. We found out that the morphine patch that we had put on Mom at about 10 p.m. would take 12 hours to get into her system. Mom was supposed to take her heavy dose morphine pill every 12 hours. It was a time release pill. That was barely able to get the pill down her throat that morning, so the doctor ordered a morphine patch so she would have to swallow. They didn't tell us that it takes 12 hours to be activated.
Wow.
I'm very sad to say that the noises that I heard for so many hours was my mom crying out in pain. And I didn't do anything about it. I laid in bed next to her. I thought how nice it would be if she were in the state. I thought how nice it would be if she were in the state that she was in for 7 hours that afternoon, so I could get some sleep. How selfish of me. It hurts me to say. It hurts me to no end to know that my mom was in pain during those hours so close to her passing. I will forever be haunted by this. I can only hope that Mom was so incoherent that she didn't really feel the pain, but her body felt the pain, and it was her body, not her spirit, that was crying out. But the mom told us to give her 3 milliliters of liquid morphine. She normally has only 1 ml. And 4 Ativan pills crushed up, which is a relaxant, she normally has only 1. So the cries, which I didn't know were cries, began to subside. Mom was not in pain for about an hour before she passed. There was a point when Mom's breathing became so labored and sporadic that the nurse thought Mom was going within a few seconds and quickly got out of the way and asked Mike to come. Then, as Mom did so many times throughout the last 6 years, she started to bounce back. Her coloring came back. Her breathing was not as sporadic. So the nurse kind of took back what she said about Mom passing or going in 2 hours. She said it could be as long as 3 days. My heart sank because there was no way that I wanted my mom to last 3 days.
Wow.
In that condition. I lay back in bed while Dad was sitting next to Mom holding her hand. And Mike was laying on the floor. Mike was carefully watching Mom's breathing from where he was. My mom's breathing was labored, and she would grasp for breath, and she would go several seconds without breathing. My dad told Mike that he should go to bed, but he said that there was no way he was going to go to bed. I closed my eyes as I lay there because I was so tired. About 1 hour later, after the nurse left, as Mike sat there on the floor watching my mom's breathing from a distance, he stood up and went to her bedside with my dad, who was on the other side of her. I can't remember what Mike said, but he turned to me and said, it's time, or something like that. I jumped up from the bed and went to her bedside. I think I fell to my knees and took her hand. I noticed immediately that the color from my mom's face was gone. She was very pale compared to only a few minutes prior. My mom's breathing was no longer labored. She would barely take a breath. Her breaths came fewer and far between. With every breath, we waited to see if that would be her last breath as we continued to talk to her. My dad said through his tears that as he stroked her arm, you've been a good wife, mother and grandmother. He said it so calmly and peacefully despite his tears. My heart would sink when she would go several seconds without breathing, and yet my heart would sink when she took another breath. I've never experienced such mixed emotions at such an intense level. We watched as she took her last breath, but her heart was still beating because I could see it on her neck. I pointed to it so Mike and Dad would know that she was still alive. We watched her neck intently. She had stopped breathing, so all of our attention was on her neck. As I watched it, I said over and over in my mind, "Go, Mom, go, Mom."
Oh.
I found out that Mike was saying that to himself too. We watched her neck intently until we no longer saw the beating. Her heart seemed to beat so strongly until the very last beat. It was very peaceful. I felt such an incredible sense of relief. I felt this relief for several minutes. I felt very honored to have been by her bed, holding her hand as we watched her make her transition from this world to the next. All three of us together began to sob. We all said, "We love you." "We love you, we love you, we love you." Mike said something like, You're done with the stinking body, Mom. You never have to deal with this darn body again," or something like that. Dad cried and said, "Thank you for giving me such a wonderful life." I kept saying, "We love you." You did such a good job. That she did a good job with the whole dying ordeal, but also with her life in general. Dad said, "What a relief, what a relief." I think all three felt so incredibly relieved. It was like two opposing emotions were going full force. We were so sad to see Mom go, and we were so relieved to see her go. It was an intense but very mixed emotion, unlike anything I've ever experienced before. All right, Dad, there you go. That's probably enough to refresh your memory.
One little minor tidbit of detail. Don't even have to add it, but we didn't know that the morphine was not being absorbed to give her relief in her dying moments until the nurse, what do they call them, the
hospice nurse
brought to our attention that she was not getting the benefit of the morphine, and until we opened her lips a little bit and gave her a dose of morphine underneath her tongue or in the mouth, and that made a world of difference in how she finally stopped breathing and went to the other world.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm glad that Christine's very articulate, and I don't remember hearing that explanation of the last moments. Wow, that's really significant. Oh.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add there, or do you remember that? I mean, what I just read to you from Kristen's journal that she sent to her siblings. Is there anything you want to?
I can't remember anything more significant than what she wrote it. Wrote it very accurately, and no, I can certainly remember those moments, those moments or last moments of her life. Wow.
Yeah.
We're gonna Mike and I, incidentally, we're gonna go by her grave. I don't know if you know, I've gone with Mike on a few of his trips, picking up and delivering vehicles. And
yeah, the day that we left, actually a couple weeks ago, the day that we left to come back home, I think it was the first time you went around with him. And I'm glad you went yesterday too.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do on one of our next trips together, we're going to stop by this cemetery and go over to her gravesite.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to go down there to her grave when we were down there a couple weeks ago, but we didn't work out to get up there. So
yeah, well, you have future opportunities to go by her grave. That's sort of a little bit of a trauma to go by her grave and think that she's waiting for the resurrection to occur, waiting for me to hold her again. So it's sort of going to the gravesite is somewhat of an emotional trauma, but I need to do it. I'm going to do it as long as I'm alive.
yeah.
Wow.
Dad.
Well, I'm glad you read that to me, Earl. I didn't know that Christine had written it down, verbalized it so well. I wonder if I'm going to ask her when we get done here, I'm going to ask her if she remembers, if she has a copy of that, a written copy of what you just read.
She said that she lost her journal. She was keeping an electronic journal on her computer and didn't have a backup copy. And she lost many years of her journal that she had been keeping on her computer. But she sent that entry to her siblings. And so I put it into my journal, just my own personal journal. I just said, this is what Chris wrote about Mom's death, quoted many pages.
Oh, that's great. How many pages?
Well, on my end, it's single spaced. Let me see, how many pages is this? Five single space pages from her journal.
Wow. Yeah, I was unaware of that. I'm glad you read that. I'm going to talk to her about it after we get done here.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I didn't want to get us both emotional, but just curious to know if there's anything else you want to add about that very sacred and intense moment.
Well, just the fact that there were so many people at the cemetery when she was interred, attesting to how many people she influenced. Not just church members, but especially all the loved ones. Aunt Martha, who's long since dead, and Aunt
Irma.
Who?
Irma. Aunt Irma.
Irma Banshees. She might have been one of the three. Anyway, the three sisters, elderly sisters that came all the way down from Utah just for Mom's funeral, and then went home.
Yeah. Do you remember, Dad? I don't know if you remember at the funeral in the Sapphire Chapel, it was packed. I mean, the chapel itself, the cultural hall / gym, and I think it was packed all the way back with people who she had influenced.
I'd forgotten that, but that doesn't surprise me. She was wow, she had big influence on, especially the girls and girl camp and the girls program in the church. She was really a significant lady.
Yeah.
It's now going through this divorce is renewed my memory of the wonderful mother that you had.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a wonderful mother. I assume she's still working as a mother on my behalf and her kids' behalf.
Yeah.
I wonder slash believe that she's working
Yeah.
in your behalf too, Dad.
Yes, she's probably not sitting around strumming a harp.
Yeah. All right, Dad. Well, why don't we call it good there for today?
Yeah, that'd be a good place to stop.
Okay. So next time, anyway, we can look at the list again that we created and see what other things you like to talk about at another time.
Okay, that'd be good. I certainly do appreciate this, and it's been a good added blessing for the Sabbath. I've been feeling very remiss here on the Sabbath, not going to meetings, and haven't even read the scriptures yet today. And so this I think was well justified to spend this time doing this.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad, for your time.